Thank you, Ryan, for that introduction, and thank you for the invitation to share some of our work here. So, as Ryan mentioned, I am part of the nephrology faculty here at University of Maryland, and we've been doing some interesting research trying to incorporate health IT in our daily interactions with patients. So as many of you may know, chronic kidney disease is on the rise, which for us as nephrologists means job security, but quite frankly, we're overwhelmed and overburdened. So as diabetes and hypertension and obesity continue to rise, kidney disease also rises in parallel with that, and there's a predicted nephrology workforce shortage in the next few years. So we need to sort of think outside of the box in our ways that we can communicate with patients and deliver efficient and effective care. There are several barriers to optimal care in kidney disease, and some of you may be aware of several of these items. So people with kidney disease, quite frankly, have no idea that they have kidney disease. So often in our clinics, we encounter patients that I myself have even seen before, and tell them that they have weak kidneys, and they are shocked and astounded. No one has ever told that to me before. And there have been several studies to sort of show that, particularly if you have even several markers of kidney disease, your degree of awareness is particularly low, to the degree of about 85% of people with kidney disease may not even know that they have it. People with kidney disease also have limited health literacy. It's not unique to chronic kidney disease. It's sort of a chronic disease phenomenon that we see. We know that patients with kidney disease are not terribly satisfied with the degree of communication that they have with their nephrology providers. And we know that patients with kidney disease do not report a very high degree of medication adherence for various reasons. They have complex regimens, they have chaotic lives, there are shifting priorities. And particularly we know that ethnic and racial minorities with chronic kidney disease have differential outcomes. Their outcomes pre-dialysis are much worse than their Caucasian counterparts, particularly among those who are diabetic. This is actually shown across all age groups. They are 4 times more likely to die with chronic kidney disease than a Caucasian woman. I would argue that patient safety is a huge problem in chronic kidney disease. So it's become sort of a healthcare initiative to reduce adverse safety events, and it's particularly relevant in chronic kidney disease. So we know that the reduced clearance of many medications, we refer to your kidney function as your GFR, glomerular filtration rate, affects how drugs are metabolized. People with kidney disease have many comorbidities. They see many doctors in the community. They see pharmacists. They go to the ER. They're inpatient, and because of that, they're on many, many complicated medications. So from a health IT perspective, in kidney disease, and particularly in chronic disease in general, health IT has many roles. So it can facilitate communication with a healthcare provider, access to personal health records, social networking, support groups. As you may have heard this morning, some people with chronic kidney disease, while they might be less likely to use health IT or online resources, once online they're more likely to communicate with others via social media. Appointment reminders, and particularly disease education, which is sort of my area of interest. So we have sort of come up with this term as the digital divide in chronic kidney disease. And what we are describing is that patients with kidney disease who primarily are on the margin of socioeconomic status, as we already mentioned, several barriers to optimal care, often ethnic and racial minorities, they are disproportionately affected with kidney disease. They probably have the least technical aptitude or potential illiteracy to use some of the health IT applications that are being developed broadly for chronic disease. But because of these barriers that we've mentioned in care, they have the highest potential to benefit from health IT tools, things that can raise awareness, reduce medication noncompliance, and potentially improve healthcare outcomes. So I'm part of a study here with Dr. Jeffrey Fink. He's one of the nephrologists and epidemiologists here at University of Maryland. This is under his R01 entitled Does Under Recognition of Kidney Disease Affect Patient Safety? And we call this cohort the Safe Kidney Care. It's a cohort of individuals with pre-dialysis chronic kidney disease intended to observe how frequently adverse safety events occur and whether or not there's any potential interventions that we may come up with to reduce these outcomes. There are 2 phases to the Safe Kidney Care cohort. The first phase involves a distribution of what we call a medical ID bracelet, more commonly known as a medical alert bracelet, similar to what you might find in diabetes. And it says, this is not exactly the engraving on the bracelet, but it's something to the point of, please consider my decreased kidney function and planning my care, in a goal to raise awareness by patients and their providers. And on it is inscribed an ID number where patients can visit the Safe Kidney Care website, which is safekidneycare.org, log in using their ID, and then navigate the website, which has information and several patient safety modules that are related to safe care and kidney disease. There are 2 portals. There's one for patients and family members. There's also one for healthcare providers. The one with patients and family members is sort of tailored to a 6th grade education. It does not use medical jargon. It uses common language. This is the login page for the Safe Kidney Care where participants are prompted to log in. This is sort of the main page of Safe Kidney Care where we have this distribution of common safety concerns that were sort of identified using a consortium of nephrologists before the website was developed. We've used icons and simple words, things like good kidney drugs, tests, foods to avoid. The icons were placed sort of in a circular fashion to avoid any implication or prioritization of one versus the other, and very simple imagery. Before we sort of launched Safe Kidney Care, we did some usability testing on it with 12 patients with kidney disease and their family members, and we sort of, we identified tasks. This was in-center usability testing, and we evaluated whether or not they could complete the task without errors. If they were easily completed, that's sort of reflected. If they had some difficulty but they could get back on track, we sort of identified that as a non-critical error. And critical errors are those that participants were unable to complete without significant intervention. And so, not surprisingly, individuals who have who use the computer less than daily or never had more difficulty completing the set of tasks. Example tasks were things like scroll to the bottom of the page, enlarge the font, click where you might find information on a good kidney drug, things like that. This is detailed information about each of the 12 participants and how they did. Red indicates a critical error, and green indicates that they completed it without difficulty. And what I'd just like from this slide to point out is that there's a significant heterogeneity to people's abilities to complete these tasks. Quite frankly, there's only one person who was able to complete all of these tasks without any difficulty. And even among those who used computers and didn't use computers regularly and those who did not, they still had significant critical errors. The most common web pages were things like renal function calculator, pills to avoid, and foods to avoid. As a follow-up to that, as an ancillary to the chronic kidney disease, to the Safe Kidney Care, we devised something that we call the Medication Inquiry System. And the Medication Inquiry System is a multi-platform health IT system which was devised to sort of reduce the frequency of medication errors in chronic kidney disease, which you may know is a very common occurrence to people who have reduced GFR. So as I mentioned, it provides safe usage on commonly used medications in kidney disease, and it's very rudimentary. It provides stoplight colors. Red is not safe, yellow used with caution, and green is safe. It's on 3 different platforms. There's a web-based platform. This is not an actual live website. This is something that we just use for usability testing, but you get an idea of the general sense. So you input a medication and you get an answer, atenolol, for example, used with caution in kidney disease. This is the texting version, ibuprofen, not safe in chronic kidney disease. And this is the personal digital assistant. We use an iPod Touch platform to test this. On this platform in particular, you could search not only by drug name, but also by drug class. We also did some usability testing on this, and we found, actually interestingly, the rate of critical errors in the SMS version and the web-based version were just about the same, and the personal digital assistant version or the smartphone version actually had the lowest rate of critical errors. We also gave them one task. It was the same task across platforms, and then we timed it to see how well people could complete it. And not surprisingly, the SMS texting version took the longest. The website was sort of the fastest, and the PDA was somewhere in between. Then we asked them which one they liked the best, and about 50% of people said they actually preferred the web-based platform. We recently just did some remote usability testing where we took 20 participants in Safe Kidney and we actually sent them 3 pill bottles that we prefabbed, and we randomized them to either SMS texting where we provided the mobile phone or the PDA where we provided the iPod Touch. And we asked them to input those 3 medications into the system and record their responses and bring it back in for our review. And so we just got this information last week, but basically you can see that the correct responses are reflected here in these lines. Red, not safe, ibuprofen, Motrin, use with caution, and safe. And for the most part, on both platforms, individuals fared fairly well. We haven't had a chance to there was a satisfaction survey also with this usability testing, and we haven't had a chance yet to look at some of the comments made and whether people would be willing to use this device in real time. Recently, we just completed using this same mobile health intervention in transplant, which is a bit of a different question. So we're not just commenting on the safety of medications in renal transplant, now we're talking more about interactions between medications. So as many of you know, immunosuppressives interact quite frequently with many other commonly used medications. So for this platform, it requires 2 inputs. First is the primary immunosuppression, and then the second is the other medication that you're cross-referencing. Again, so there is an increased level of complexity. And the investigators who just completed this, actually, interestingly, this is only on the SMS texting version. They haven't done the iPod Touch version yet. But they found that the rate of ability to complete them without difficulty was fairly consistent, regardless of whether you texted on a daily basis or not. We now are breaking this down, and we are maybe taking a step back from a technology standpoint. We are proposing doing the medication inquiry system via an interactive voice response system, or IVRS, essentially where you can spell the medication. Potentially you'd be able to say the medication, but because of the complexity of the medication names, we're not quite there in terms of our voice response. And then you can also press corresponding numbers. One of the primary goals of Safe Kidney Care is to identify the frequency of adverse safety events, things like hypoglycemia, low blood glucose, or hyperkalemia, elevated blood potassium. And so actually Dr. Fink just got an approval to do a study using an IVRS-based symptom reporting system. So in general, I would say that limited health literacy, disease awareness, and patient safety are major problems in chronic disease, and we need to think outside the box and use some novel tools to empower patients to engage in their own care and to increase our ability to communicate efficiently with this patient population. As you know, health IT possibilities, I'm sure you've heard about it all morning. They're as diverse as our patient population. Whether or not target populations such as those with chronic kidney disease will be accepting of these tools is yet to be determined on a large scale. So I'd just like to thank University of Maryland, the Safe Kidney Care cohort, and another cohort called CRIC, for which we are exploring some of these health IT tools. Thank you.
And along with Gilliam, we work for the School of Social Work, and I run the Resource Parent Training Program for the Child Welfare Academy, which means that I develop and organize trainings for resource parents across the state of Maryland. And every semester I try to have several trainings that focus on helping foster parents to understand those complicated emotional processing needs for the children that are in their homes. And every semester I have resource parents who come back to me and ask me for more immediate and practical ways to do that processing. So things that are more safe and more effective that can really be done pretty quickly with the children in their homes. And similarly, there are also probably clinicians and individuals who are also doing some of that processing around emotional and cognitive needs who are looking for some of those tools. And frequently those tools in the past have been through the arts. But when we're looking at the arts, we often need materials that are not readily available. And so one of the devices that we may all have with us that could be more immediately available are those mobile devices, our phones, our iPads. And those tools can help us to access some very creative apps that will help us to look at music, writing, and art, visual arts, as ways of doing some of that more immediate emotional processing. 3 of the reasons that we think these apps can be effective tools for emotional expression and processing are portability, context, and touch. For portability and context, they speak to that immediate, that typically available moment where you may be needing to process something and you have an ability to do that through the app. And you don't have to wait until you get somewhere else, which can make it more effective. And the modality of touch helps us to learn. So in the same way that we would use paper or an instrument, and that touch would help us to learn, also the work that we do on our screens can have some of the same effects. So today, Julie is going to walk you through a handful of apps that we imagine could be used by individuals and families or in clinical settings to help address immediate processing needs. And if you want more information, there is a website that Julie's put together that has the videos that she's going to show you today. It also has a handout that has a lot of concise information. And right now, Julie is going to start with music.
And people have been talking a lot about out of the box, so just to let you know, I'm completely out of the box. Earhart, okay? I know everybody has an Earhart app on their phone, right? No, probably not. But you should. So we're going to explore the Earhart first. Now, if people are not musically oriented, you can click on the treble clef. And for today, we'll pick Bach. And then if you want to play the harp, it's not hard. Like anybody in this room can do it. You can click on the little notes. See, you just take your finger and you click on the notes and you'll hear sound. And with like that. And so it's that simple, and if you looked really closely, you would see the strings vibrate, which is pretty awesome. And now you just feel really, calm, right? Hopefully? Okay, you won't in a minute. Okay, so now we have brass instruments, right? Now I actually do play the French horn, and I know that there are people in here who have played instruments. Who's played instruments? Okay, so there's no excuse not to play an instrument, okay? It does help with your mental health. And it also helps if you have people that you work with that also use them. So we're going to start here. We're going to start with the French horn. Now again, all you have to do is take your finger. Now, for those of us who are brass players, they're like, wait a minute, there are a lot more than just 3 valves. I understand, but we're going to be creative and out of the box, right? So you're going to go ahead and you're going to just simply take your finger and you're going to click on each one of the letters and you'll have sound and it will hit stop. And I'm going to give you an example. Now for some people that was a scale, for some people that was a holiday carol, but that's up to you however you see it. Now, I am a very hyper person. For those people who know me, I don't sit still for very long. My mind is always thinking all the time. So I had a student come up to me and say, I need help with meditating and I can't meditate. Now I am the person you should come and talk to because I'm the person who does not stay still for very long. But I can actually meditate. So if I can meditate, anybody in this room can do it. Now, and it's taken some work, but I can't meditate quietly with be Zen Julie, the last minutes of yoga, forget it. I have to have music, okay? And there is music out there that you can use that can help you with that. So if you are a person who's as hyper as I am, I would appreciate, you guys can go ahead and you can use that. So anyway, Healing Voice is one I would completely recommend. It's really, really good, and you're going to see why. But first, I'm going to show you that if you're a person who's having trouble with sleeping, or you want to go ahead and here's a list of, I skip around a lot too, so bear with me for a second. But you can go ahead and you can pick whichever list you want on the song, and then here you can set a timer. So if you wanted to go to bed and you wanted to have this great music, but you didn't want it to totally kill your battery power, you can go ahead and you can set it. And you can also use it as an alarm to wake up. And now I put everybody to sleep. Now, this is really out of the box. Some people have seen this, some people haven't. Some people who have already laughed because they already know. So you have your phone. Now I just want to also let you know that people who know me, they know I'm very much a Mac geek, but I'm letting you know you can get these apps onto Android. You can get them on the Surface. These are apps where a lot of these you can get to, and if you go to my website, which I will flash the link up again, I do put those so that you can get to those different links that are there. So I want to let you know that this is called the Smule. It's really, really a cool app. If you wanted to collaborate with other people across the world, like you wanted to bond with me and we wanted to play together, we could do that because you have that world feature. And you can also do freestyle. You have the ability to have a key, so you can set your key. And the way you play it is you take your fingers and you simply put on top of those buttons. So you don't even need to read music because it has a song book that's here. You just have to be able to figure out what's open and what's closed and play it. And here's an example. Now I warned you, I told you I was out of the box. And my better half was like, you bring geek to a whole new level. But think about if you're connecting with a kid, you're connecting with somebody out in the field, and you did that, what an impression you would leave. Now writing. Writing something, if you all know me, I love writing. That's sarcasm. But one of the things that you can do is, this is a changing room journal. This is different than a lot of the other journals. And there are a lot of really good journals that are out there. So I recommend if you do write, this is a really good way to do it. You can put passwords on it so other people can't get to it. But this is really good because it has different rooms that are associated with it. So you can click on the changing room, you go to the changing room interactive journal, and you can pick whatever rooms. For a social worker, you have, there's a art room, there's bedrooms, there's things like that. So if you're working with people who have sexual abuse and those type of things, it can be a useful tool for them to be able to place photos. So here you place photos, you're doing art. So there's a bedroom. So those are things that you could probably use. This could be a tool for that. Now, this is the blue room. You can't read this completely, but what I did was I talked about Mena Lamacha, the impossible dissertation, and I put my own version on here. And you can tell that I love research. Hopefully you can see that, but it's like, hear no research, see no research, And so that's kind of was my mantra when I was going through my research. But you can see that you can post pictures of how it is that you feel. Now, iThoughts HD, anybody know about mind mapping? Mind mapping is awesome, especially if you're an abstract person. If you're a linear person, you may not like this that much. But what's really good about iThoughts is that it does a really good job of, if you were to have a therapist and they were to say to you, how do you feel about this? Well, sometimes you don't know how it is you feel. But this is a really good way to be able to organize your thoughts so you can figure it out. And here's a really quick example. I have to go to the right place first. So as you can see, this is a little abstract, but you create bubbles, and within those bubbles you can go ahead and you can put your thoughts. So if you have someone who has been sexually assaulted and and they're exposed and they need to be able to talk about their shame and how they feel, this is a really good way to break down their feelings, put it in this way, and share it. Now, for those of us who are linear, there is an answer for both sides. You can see that there's an outline. So there's an outline for the people who are linear, and there is the mind map for the people who think a little bit more abstractly. But you can see, you can kind of get a sense of how this can be helpful being able to break these down. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to summarize really quickly because I think I have like 1 minute left. So there are lots of other apps that are here that you can see, you can go through. And there are many ways to be able to express how it is you feel. And I want to let you know how many tools there are. I see so many people using the internet, playing games. And we talk about the tools that are there. I just want people to know that there are so many things that you can do to reach the people that are out there, whether for your own self-care or for other people. And And I will be making sure every single person is getting the AIR Act. Thank you very much. AIR, thanks so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Kantahyanee. I'm a research assistant professor in the School of Social Work. I work in the Ruth H. Young Center for Families and Children, which is a research center there, and we do a tremendous amount of work with community-based organizations located here in Maryland as well as other states. And I'm going to be presenting on a study that we did in collaboration with a local agency called the Family Tree. It's called Text to Connect, using text messaging to enhance parents' engagement in a parent training program. And what I'm going to do in my talk is describe the methods and findings of the study. And as I'm going through those methods and findings, kind of talk about some of the lessons that we learned, especially as it relates to the process implementation of integrating the text messaging component into their programming. And also very briefly highlight future directions for research that build on the text messaging study. So just a little background before I get started. Parent training programs for the prevention of child maltreatment are pretty common in this country, and the agency that we're working with, the Family Tree, focuses on the prevention of child maltreatment. In federal fiscal year 2011, there were approximately 681,000 victims of child abuse and neglect in this country. And for parents who become involved in the child welfare system, they're often mandated or referred to become involved in a child welfare related parent training program as a stipulation for receiving their children back from foster care, or it could just be, again, a referred service that's intended to strengthen the family if there were some identified parenting deficits that the social worker may have cited and then referred the parent to the parent training service. And there are about 400,000 child welfare involved parents who receive these services based on the most recent estimate. And very broadly, parent training programs, they have varying content, varying length of time, but they typically are focused on reducing risk factors and enhancing protective factors known to promote child safety, permanency, and well-being, again, for the prevention of child maltreatment and the types of negative outcomes that may attend to a child that has been involved in a maltreatment situation. For example, mental health problems like anxiety and depression. Even though these parent training programs are very common, engaging parents is a really, really big challenge for programs like the Family Tree that we've been involved with. They experience high rates of attrition and low completion rates. And again, the completion is important for a lot of parents because it could be what they need in order to receive their children back from a foster care situation. And of course, it's just important because we want parents to be exposed to that content so that they are better parents. Some barriers that have been identified in the literature, and this is not surprising for most of us in this room, lack of resources due to poverty. So there are barriers to access to transportation, affordable childcare, and also, if you can imagine, many of these families are in crisis situations. They may have lost housing, lost employment, lots of reasons that contributed to a neglect situation, for example. So all this chaos could mean that their daily hassles, issues with scheduling, and other life demands that create problems getting them to their parent training program consistently. And also there's evidence that some parents perceive lack of cultural competence with the facilitators who are leading the parent training program, so they may come but not feel like they're developing a relationship or rapport with that facilitator, and therefore disengage and don't complete the program. So this is something that the Family Tree has experienced for many, many years, and we We were working with them on a number of other projects aimed to improve their programming, and we thought that for this particular issue that the application of new technologies, mobile technologies in particular, might offer a solution. And also we know from the literature in public health that mobile technologies have been instrumental in helping to improve appointments. So for this component of our work, our main research question was, do text message session reminders increase attendance and completion in their positive parenting program, what we call it PPP, not to be confused with the Triple P program. And this is the Family Trees website. And just a note, this is a resource, the nonprofit that's living in the economy that we have today. They don't have a lot of funds and supports for really extensive and sophisticated systems. So that's kind of the context we were working in. Study recruitment, I'm just gonna go through this really quickly. We recruited 117 parents into this study. We offered them $10 gift cards, and it was a controlled, randomized design. We had a group that received the core parenting class plus text message session reminders, and then a standard group, which was basically the services as usual, just the class. And we had records from the agency that helped us to collect data on attendance. We also collected data on the receipt of text messages, and we had demographic data available as well from their intake forms. This is the text message reminder. They beginning at week 2 of the program, and they were sent by an intern. The agency has field-based interns that work there, and we use that capacity for this component. And it basically just told them the date and time, and made sure that we had the family that was coming from the family tree, who the session facilitator was, and where that class would be located, which really helped because they also had a problem with people sometimes going to the wrong classroom and the wrong facilitator. So it had a dual purpose for some folks. We use grouptexting.com, which is a very low-cost system. It's a free system, available just by keyword searching. And one advantage of the system, in addition to it being very inexpensive for the agency, was that you can create group lists, which is perfect for the class structure that the family tree has. And again, we wanted to use something that the agency would be able to implement if they so chose after the study was over. The sample, 117 participants again, the average age was 33 years old. The majority were female and African American, and very high poverty in the population. 1/3 had no high school degree or GED. So this is pretty consistent as well with the profile of folks who come to the agency generally. 63 were randomized to the text messaging enhanced group and 54 to the standard. There were no differences between those groups based on the demographic information we had available. And here's some findings on the implementation process. There were supposed to be 9 text messages sent during their duration in this 10-week program. The average was 8%, so there was some administrative error, again, relying on the interns to send the messages. And again, we got data about whether they received their text messages or not, and between 61% to 88% each week reported receiving the text message. And sometimes this was because people may have had a cell phone at the beginning of the study, but by in the later weeks, they had no longer a cell phone plan, or they may have been relying on a relative's cell phone in the home, which we accepted for the study, and may not have had access to the phone. And that's just some anecdotal data that we were able to gather. Now I'm going to talk really quickly about the attendance and completion findings, but I just wanted to make sure I gave some definitions. So attendance, of course, is whether you attended your class. But people could also make up a class. You could make up to 2 classes. So if you missed 8 classes, no more than 8 classes, you could make up 2 and still be considered to have completed the program. On attendance, we found that participants attended 6.9 classes on average, and attendance was very similar between both of the groups, not statistically significant. And then, interestingly, we looked at makeup classes, and we found that nearly 60% of the participants took makeup classes, which is a lot considering that this was extra effort on behalf of the facilitators. We found that among those that completed the program, and I'm going to talk more about that data in the next slide, 81% of those completers participated in makeup classes. And there was a trend towards the text messaging group to have taken more of these makeup classes than the standard group. And this is just another way of looking at those data, and what was really interesting to the agency was looking at where the dips in attendance occurred for both groups and where it kind of increased. And what we found at the end was 79% of the text messaging group completed and 63% of the standard completed. And here's a bar graph, and what's interesting here is we were able to get aggregate data on the non-participants. So on that very last bar, we found that the folks that participated the same time in the study but were not in the study for either group completed at 59%. But compared to those that received text messaging, there was a 20% difference. So that was something additionally that the agency thought was very interesting, kind of beyond the comparison between the 2 study groups. And we went beyond kind of the bivariate analyses, and we did some multivariate analyses and found that for attendance, there was no significant difference between the groups. But for completion, we did find that the model of intervention group predicting completion was significant. But when we looked at the individual predictors, it was the makeup sessions that actually predicted the completion, as opposed to group of the other demographics. So the take-home message that we had was there was a high proportion of the texting group that completed the PPP. Attendance didn't change, but it appears that the makeup classes really played a strong role in completion. And what we feel these findings suggest is that the text message reminders really kept the class on the participants' radar, may have engaged them more with the facilitators so that they were more likely to want to take that extra effort to make up a class. And it was that makeup class that enabled them to complete at a higher level than those that didn't get the text messages. And we have lots of limitations, and just some of the top briefly, lack of fidelity to the texting protocol. But we really liked doing it this way because it was kind of real world what would happen if the agency used its own resources to implement this. The facilitators were not blind to which classes were involved in the research, which may have motivated some of the standard in particular to participate at a greater level, and especially for the research side, we were offering a $10 incentive at post-test, so that could have played a role in some that weren't getting the text messages showing up a little more. And of course, there were some variables that we would have loved to have in the analyses that just were not available, but very relevant. So some future considerations for implementation. The agency, I should say, was really interested in these results. You can imagine just the implications for funding and for being able to say that they're having an impact on more families because of a higher completion rate is something that really spoke to them. And in some prior analyses before we did this, there was a finding that folks who completed PPP were more likely to not have a reoccurrence of maltreatment in the future, looking at child welfare agency data, than those who did not complete. So the whole issue of completion is really important to them. they're interested in doing this, but we really want them to consider, is this something that can be implemented? And I thought this might be something relevant to us because we are more looking at how do we translate our research into actual practice. And so these are some of the questions that we're asking, and we're looking at it through an implementation science framework. This is the National Implementation Research Network Implementation Drivers Framework. And I don't have time to go into this. Ryan is looking at me like I have 30 seconds. But there's a competency side to what drives successful implementation, for example, that looks at who you selected to implement this intervention. Are they the appropriate folks? Is training being provided? Is it the adequate amount of training that's being provided? What kind of coaching is being provided in an ongoing way to support the implementation staff? And for leadership, for example, looking at, and I have some questions, I can go to that. The leadership component of the implementation drivers looks at, is there sufficient administrative buy-in? How frequently do leaders communicate about the practice change? Is there policies and procedures in place to support the practice change? So these are all questions that we're going to ask using this framework to really guide the agency in deciding if it's something that you really can do, even though it seems like it would be a benefit to you. And we're doing a survey now looking at accessibility to other mobile technologies in this population, and also patterns of use. So we asked them about, for example, are they using the internet to look up health information and then information about parenting? And where the agency's really interested in how mobile technologies might be used for complementing the curriculum. So we're applying this mHealth development and evaluation framework to help them think through how this text messaging that we see is feasible can be used to actually create behavior change. And that's all. Just acknowledging the parents who participated in the study and the family tree, our research team. Thank you.
My name is Eun-Shim Nahm. Again, thank you so much for this opportunity, and it's great to be here today, and I hope that I don't put you to sleep after lunch. And this is the device that, it's an iPad, but I just want to show you the cover. This is the iPad cover that we used for our project. And in the past 10 years, my research has focused on using e-health interventions to change health behaviors of older adults and to provide resources to caregivers. And when I say older adults, I mean 50 and above, so please don't get offended. Some people don't get offended if I say 50 and over, but prevention is important in e-health prevention. So that's what we have, I myself have been doing, and also my team has been focusing on e-health intervention. And first, I would like to recognize my team members, Well-Mobile team. Susan Antu is the director of the Well-Mobile team, and Dr. Pokras is from UNCP, Dr. Chang is from UNBC, and the others is from our school. And I think my project manager is here, right? Ginny? She's our project manager. She's a fantastic person, and together we learn Spanish through this project. So my research has focused on e-health intervention. Now our team is adding mobile health technologies, and also we are focusing on underserved population. Before in our e-health research, the majority of participants are more affluent individuals, but now we are ready to really move on to our underserved population. So today I would like to share with you some of the findings that we learned from developing and testing a mobile health website for mobile clinic patients. So the aims of the study, this study was supported by SO School of Nursing DRIP Fund as a pilot study. And the aims of this study was to develop a prototype theory-based mobile health program for mobile clinic patients and to test the usability of the program. And a little bit of background, I think Susanna really talked about many aspects of this already, so I hope that I don't repeat. So health information technology really revolutionized healthcare, and e-health and mHealth technologies can really empower consumers to better manage their own health. However, there are many segments of underserved populations who are still left out from the benefit of health information technology. So one of the populations is the individuals that the well-mobile cover in the community. How many of you are aware of well-mobiles in our school? Okay, that's good. So we have Governor's well-mobile that full well-mobiles go to the community and provide service to the underserved population. And when you just, let's just look at the well-mobile programs. So mobile health programs in the United States right now, we have about 2,000 mobile clinics that serve 7.5 million people annually in underserved communities. And as you can see, the mobile programs focus on provision of chronic illnesses and preventive care. And also it operates with a few major challenges, such as limited resources, because it's just a van, and small spaces and language barriers. And also there is a lack of resources for self-management and follow-up care. Oh. Okay, technology glitch. Okay. Okay. So, but when you think about this small space and resources and language barriers, then the emerging mHealth technologies may offer affordable solutions to mitigate some of those challenges. For example, when you think about the mobilities, it's very convenient to carry rather than the laptop. And it fits well with small spaces, perfect for well-mobile situation. As you can see here, instead of bulky manuals, it's very nifty case. And even I dropped my iPad. You know, I took the risk and then I dropped it. It was safe. And then it has robust connectivity. For example, when they go to the outside, broadband can be an issue, but then they can get onto the cellular network. So easy access and robust use of multimedia. I think in the morning, we discussed about all the underserved population and language barriers and so forth. So in that regards, the video clips or audio files can really do a lot for these individuals. And when you think about the mobile devices, I think I may need to skip it. It was already covered. 91% of American adults use mobile phones, right? And we did a survey of our well-mobile participants, and 65 of patients really were using cell phones, and many of them had iPhones. So, and then also, when we use this iPad for underserved population, always the critique is that it's too expensive for these individuals. But in our study, this iPad is replacing the computers, laptop. So it can be less expensive. And I think it's not new, but the iPad really revolutionized tablets by optimizing touch screen. They don't need to type. For underserved population, typing can be difficult, especially for the individuals who have language barriers. It's just a touch screen, so it's much easier for them to use it. They don't need to type. They just click on it, then they will go to the modules. And there has been also rapid growth in iPad use, and many school children are using it, so the parents can use it too. So this is the idea. When you go to the well-mobile, initially we saw these bulky manuals, and the idea is that we can really replace those manuals using this one iPad, and then we can update as easily as we can. And actually, when you think about the mobile devices, I think previous presenters already talked about the research that has been done in SMS-based the the interventions in other areas. But in the literature, there is a limited literature about the methodology to develop iPad or iPhone-based health learning modules. We can deliver text-based short messages, but how can we deliver like learning modules that has a lot of content? So from that regard, we developed a prototype mobile health programs for mobile clinics. We call it M&M program. So in the next few slides, I would like to discuss, I'd like to explain some of the findings that we have learned during the developmental phase. So since the majority of population that WellMobile serves is Hispanic population, we developed the content in English and Spanish. At first we thought that we kind of know how to develop the website. So we thought that we had this developmental process down pat, but it was really different. When you develop the content in two languages, it can require more than double of the efforts, because we need to make sure that two contents are similar, and some of the words really cannot translate well. Like for example, we know that when you say English 101 or exercise 101, we know what it means, right? But the Latinas, it doesn't mean a thing. So when you translate those specific words, it took more time. So we thought that the modules must be developed what we call it like device agnostic. So it should be accessible via PC, iPad, or iPhone, and even cellular phone. So we thought that initially it was easy process. But then we realized that the content we develop for iPad and the content we develop for iPhone is completely different, because the amount of the content is different for iPhone because of the small spaces. Anyway, so even though it's English, Spanish, iPad, and iPhone, it was like 4 times of the work we learned. But we learned a lot, so we are grateful. So we developed three modules: weight management, balanced diet, exercise, and resources. Of course, resources have to be culturally relevant, and also the pictures have to be culturally relevant. So we developed those. And from the design perspective, we recognize several challenges. I mean, when you think about it, it's kind of natural. Types of mobile devices, we focused on iPad and iPhone and PC. And it was two completely different design. Because when you think about the iPhone, based on the principle, we do not use pictures for the iPhone, as compared to iPad, is more picture-driven. So we had to conceptualize differently when we develop the content. And so it required a great deal of time just for conceptualization and working with the developers. So next few slides show you our kind of screenshots. This is the main modules. For example, if you click on it, this pops up, and then if you click one more, then it pops up, and they explain what it is. And we use very simple navigation method, the back and forth, and icon-driven. And we learned a lot about those too. And this is the Spanish version, pretty much same. So this is kind of Spanish version food label. And this is the iPhone, the screenshot of iPhone, like English and Spanish, pretty much same, but as you can see, it's text-based, not, there's no pictures. And then, you can see the navigation method. When you think about your iPhone and iPad, navigation method is pretty similar, but when you think about really learning modules, the navigation method was quite different. And each device used slightly different navigation method. And we had to think about those, because these individuals are not familiar with those technologies. So we have to really think about how they are going to do, search those content. So in terms of the user testing, I have 5 minutes, so I just run through. So we use a heuristic evaluation by selected web developers and clinicians, and also we conducted user testing using think out loud method and observation. And we recruited 20 participants, 11 Hispanic participants and 9 English-speaking participants. And being able to use the internet was not a criteria, but they had to be a remote patient and 21 years and older, but they have to read and write either English and Spanish. So procedures, and when you conduct usability testing with a translator, it is very important to take enough time for staff orientation, because the researcher and translator have to work together. And we learned that it needs a lot of harmonization. And we went through some scenario-based testing and so forth. And in terms of user testing, we use a think out loud method. And each participant completed 2 separate sessions in 2 days. And the majority of participants completed 1 iPad and 1 iPhone module. But when you look at this, the sessions, iPhone sessions was lower just because we reached the saturation phase. And from the analysis, we did transcribe the audio tape, and then we developed the themes. The unit of analysis was the sentence, and I will just skip some detailed methods since I have a few minutes left. And 4 coders completed this coding just for validity. For the results, the mean age of the participants was 46. The majority of participants were the female, and even though we didn't require internet user as a criteria, the majority, about 80%, were internet users. But in terms of the internet use per week, 8 hours per week, it is significantly lower than user population that we have studied in internet study. And the PC knowledge, the majority answered that they are beginners or advanced beginners. But this is different from our eHealth studies. But the most of the time when you conduct eHealth studies, participants answer they are competent. So it was different population. But the education level was high, I think, as compared to other peers. In terms of what we have learned from the usability testing procedure, even though had not used the iPad or iPhone, they were able to easily learn how to use and how to use the devices and complete the usability testing. And we also realized that many underserved persons with language barriers are not really accustomed to doing usability testing type of activities just because they felt that they are critiquing something. That's not their, didn't seem to be their nature. So they are not familiar with critiquing things. And overall findings, a total of 559 comments were analyzed and then categorized into 14 specific categories and 1 other category. We had much more comments from English version and much more comments on iPad version. And Latino participants required many probing questions. They tried to give us good comments rather than critique. So we had to ask specific questions. And the following 2 tables summarize the results. And the first table is the total combined comments for both iPhone and iPad. As you can see, the majority of the items that had frequent comments were positive, but there are some issues that had frequent comments. So we will go over a little bit later in a minute. And then this one is the separate comments, iPad and iPhone. And as you can see, the iPad module had many more comments except those 2 categories. Screen size and comments on the length of the information on one page, just because the screen size was just so small. And some of the areas had issues. It's size of fonts, pictures, and buttons. Again, it's related to the screen size of the iPad or iPhone as compared to PC. And navigation-related comments, order of navigation is different. Every individual seems to have, not every individual, but people have different mental map, how things work. So that seems to be an issue. And many participants want to have more explanation or more content, but the issue is that how can we put those content into these small spaces and in a user-friendly manner. That was the issue. And the association between the content and pictures, we didn't really expect this, but many people commented, why this icon or picture means this? Why does it go with this? And when we compared iPad versus iPhone, the number of comments were higher for iPad modules, except those two, the size of the screen and the length of information. Because iPhone, you can put only so much, but then how we can really make the content comparable, iPad version versus iPhone version. So discussion, I think I mentioned most of things while I'm explaining. So the findings confirm the major design challenges related to size of the screen in mobile devices. And we knew that, but when we conducted the study and did usability testing, we really recognized it. Then how we can make improvement, I think that needs to be researched. And many comments were association between the content and graphics, but the thing is that individuals have different mental maps and how we can reconcile this issue. And for example, a good practice to develop mobile phone website is not using pictures, but our participants expected to see pictures. They like pictures. So how we can satisfy the users? And one thing that we learned is that among the underserved population, there are persons who never learned to use computers, never learned how to use keyboard, but became iPhone-based web users. So there is different generation, especially underserved population. So in conclusion, the M&M program was revised based on the comments and will be used for future intervention study, larger grant project. And mobile devices can be an effective tool for underserved populations to deliver health promotion and education in mobile clinics. We really received a lot of good comments about the content. And different types of mobile devices may be used for different pedagogical aims. So as a researcher and as a clinician, I think we need to pick and choose which device is going to be most effective for our population and for which purpose. Because the text for babies or text for kids smoking may work for certain types, but it may not work for certain other content. So something that we need to be thinking about. Thank you.